Hi, my name is Tyler, and this is the Fox Valley Film Critics. In this special episode of the show, we're going to be discussing the next in the lineup of the AFI's Top 100 American Films, Preston Sturges' Sullivan's Travels, as well as the newest Toy Story sequel. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to the show, brought to you by Groupthink Productions and FVTV. Joining us once again is our regular whipping boy, Terry.
Oh, I was so excited. I thought I was going to get a new one. I think you've called me a whipping boy before.
Have I?
I think so. I was like, oh man, I'm getting a new. I was over here like jumping around. I'm like, I'm going to get a new nickname.
I don't remember
no.
at this point.
So Sullivan's Travels. I actually think that I picked the right out of the movies you recommended to watch, the right ones, because I've never heard of this movie, nor Preston Sturges, and I'm glad that I now have, because this was really good.
Oh man, it is.
Really good.
I had not watched it before, and I'm like, okay, now I need to watch every single Preston Sturges movie.
I'm kind of on the same boat as that. I was very surprised. The background of the movie, he's Joel McRae plays John L. Sullivan, a really successful Hollywood film director that wants to make a movie about the plight of the American working man and feels that in poverty and feels that he won't know how to make the film great until he experiences poverty firsthand. And it starts out as a comedy because he tries to leave Hollywood to go into poverty, but Hollywood won't leave him. To them, it's a publicity stunt. To him, it's research. And there's some laughs in that because it's like he's walking down the street dressed in Hollywood's version of a hobo with the sack on his back and the patchy clothes, and there's a big tour bus following him with directors and everything that has food and all this stuff made. So there's definitely some humor to start with, and it towards the end it kind of goes dark, but it's a 1941 Hollywood movie, so there's going to be a happy ending at the end, which there is. But what parts of it did you really like?
I kind of enjoyed the whole experience. The middle of it's a little murky for me, but the whole ride of watching this clueless director bumble his way around Hollywood trying to make his art movie is just wonderful.
Yeah, and it's funny because I looked and I couldn't see any references. I did a little bit of research on Preston Sturges himself, and one of the articles I saw was they kind of referred to him as a bright star in Hollywood that faded really fast. So I know it was a satire on Hollywood. But I'm also wondering if John L. Sullivan wasn't somewhat Preston Sturges, but I didn't find anything to kind of support that.
Here's my thought on that, because you said it's a satire, and that's true. There's a lot going on in this movie in terms of what it's actually saying about art and whether or not you can actually capture the experience of the working man. And I think that there's a fascinating contradiction in the film that. The movie is the conclusion dramatically of the film is that it's kind of pointless to try, and that if you want to try to help the common working man, you should just make something that helps them to improve the quality of their lives. In that case, it turns out the best thing for the director to do is to make comedies, because he's like, oh, I can make people laugh, I can make people happy. And he realizes that kind of has an effect on people more than trying to capture the experience in an artful fashion. But at the same time, the movie does a really good job capturing the pain of being an average person. So it's just what is the director actually saying with this movie? Because it seems to be saying two things at once.
I was going to touch on what you said, and I agree more with the latter of what you said. I think that the overall theme of this movie was people don't want to be reminded of the people that are living in these problems don't need to be reminded about their problems. They want to forget about their problems. And I think when they were in the church and they watched the Disney reels and everyone was laughing, and he realized that these people, no money, dirt poor living in, because I think I don't know if this was set during the Depression, so I don't want to say Hoover Towns.
It was early 40s.
Okay.
So this would have been late Depression.
So they were still in the quote unquote Hoover Towns or the shanty towns, and they still, despite that economic disparagement, they were able to laugh and forget about how bad their life had become. And I think that was his overall message. I think that's the part that I think that.
But it's mildly contradicted by the fact that the film does get dark, and that it actually isn't afraid to actually like portray what it is like to be someone who's poor. I'm wondering if Preston Sturges actually has some experience in that background, because he might actually have come from poverty to some degree. Because I think that I don't think you can. The movie seems to be riffing off people who don't know how to portray that kind of pain, like out of touch people in Hollywood.
Yeah.
As opposed to, and I'm wondering if Preston Sturges himself considered himself like an exception to that rule, and if so, is he being tone deaf, or is he actually know what he's talking about? Because it seems pretty authentic, all things considered.
Yeah, that's very true.
And it just kind of touches on this idea of to what degree can art actually capture reality. So
that's a good point too. Yeah, I was going to say too that the dark part is can it be as simple as be careful what you wish for? Because it was like all he wanted was to like he said, I want trouble. I want to go somewhere where I don't have a name. And all those things that he wanted, he finally got, and he realized just how terrifying it was. He ended up arrested for a crime because he was knocked out and blurry when he did it. And then was in a chain gang, and he's trying to do the same, then he's like, oh man, this has just gotten real. Now I got to be my real self. I'm John L. Sullivan, famous director. It's like, no, you're not. And the chain gang guard just slaps him around. It's like, you be careful what you wish for. It's like you said, it's like, how much can art imitate life? Well, he got a dose of real life real fast, and he I guess he couldn't take it. Like he had, spoiler alert for a movie from '41, but it was, again, directed by Preston Sturges and written by, and I like.
It's about the experience. Don't worry about spoilers.
Yeah, but I like Preston Sturges is just a creative writer too. This was a very creative story. I like at the end how he got himself out of the worker camp by saying that he murdered himself because like the bum that stole his boots that had his ID cards in them, they couldn't identify that. It was just really well. It was really well done, like all the way around. Like you said, I enjoyed the whole experience too, and I enjoyed Veronica Lake because I now have a new crush from early Hollywood.
I've seen it. She's also in This Gun for Hire, which is also a great movie to watch.
Okay.
I think there is an important angle on this we need to hit this film from.
Oh, sure.
Preston Sturges is one of the favorite directors of the Coen brothers. It's probably not surprising, but the film that he's trying to make in the film, that the character who's in the middle, I forget his name, he's trying to make a movie called Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? The Coen brothers made Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? I don't know how this is possible, but they just trolled John L.
Sullivan?
Yeah, John L. Sullivan.
Yeah.
It's like, look, we could do it, you couldn't.
Right? And it was, and I know that Old Brother were out there, but it was so funny because the Sturges one almost was kind of the same theme.
Of Barton Fink.
Okay. No, I've never seen Barton Fink because I was thinking of the same theme of the Old Brother Were Out Thou for the Coen brothers because it was the little man, because that scene that they showed in Sullivan's Travels was the two guys fighting on the train, and then you realize it was big business, and and they were going at it to the death and stuff like that. So, yeah, when it's funny that because when I heard "Oh Brother Were Out There," the first thing I was like, is that where the Coen brothers got the idea from? And I looked it up, and sure enough, it was. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Barton Fink is also a movie about a clueless screenwriter who's trying to capture the plight of the common man. So
okay. All right. That seems to be a theme that's been redone.
The Coen brothers really like Preston Sturges.
So I was going to say too. Speaking of Veronica Lake, it really surprised me that for 1941 there was quite a few scenes of her in the shower. I didn't think they. I didn't think they put those in movies in the 40s.
Well, remember the opening lines of the film. We're going to make a great film. It has to we're going to sell to everyone.
Right.
But it has to have sex.
That's right. I forgot about that.
But with sex.
Yes.
The best catchphrase in the film.
Yeah.
But with sex.
Right. And then the butlers were really good too. There was just so many funny things that are still relevant today, like the wife that he just married because his business manager said it would be a good idea for him to get married, who then has to collect a alimony check from him every time he gets paid, and then she marries the business manager. It was just there was a lot going on in this movie, but it wasn't so much that it became unenjoyable. It was actually really fun to watch. I imagine I don't know, I wouldn't know because movies were a lot different. Like the movie theater experience in the 40s was a lot different. But I imagine audiences enjoyed this, and also, if I'm not mistaken, this 1941. I don't remember. I'm gonna feel bad for not remembering, but I think Pearl Harbor either.
That was December of 1941.
Okay, so it was around, and this came out in February.
So this would have been
right?
way before that.
Way before. So okay, but you still had World War II going on. You had the European front going on, and then, like you said, the end, like close to the end of the Depression, because America obviously hadn't entered World War II yet to get us out of the Depression, to help get us out of the Depression. So this was a movie that I think people could go to and forget about their troubles. And maybe, I don't know, maybe Preston Sturges hit on something, because it was a movie that people going through that time could relate to.
This is what they called back in the day a movie made for adults.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
they don't make
Yeah.
those anymore.
Yeah.
So like they clearly had the ability to make something a little bit more highbrow and a little more contemplative, I guess. So
Yeah.
It's not just like a normal screwball comedy where they just make something disposable. And so it's clearly they knew they were making something for an
Yeah.
intelligent audience.
So what'd you think about the kid in the tank that he built himself, obviously?
That's the scene where they're driving down with the bus.
Yes,
right?
and the bus is trying to chase after this like little roadster that this kid made.
best thing.
Yeah.
That's all the time we have for this segment. Join us for the following segment. We'll be discussing Toy Story 4. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to the show. So, what are your thoughts on making a Toy Story 4 in general?
So before I saw it, I was like, really? I was like, there's not even Andy. Andy's not even going to be in it, because in Toy Story 3 they went to Bonnie. Having seen Toy Story 4, I was wrong. I really liked Toy Story 4. I for a minute I thought it was going to go the same route as Toy Story 3, which was really dark. Almost went that same route, but they turned it around at the end. I enjoyed it, especially Forky, played by Tony Hale from Buster from Arrested Development. And then I don't know what his character is in Veep, but Veep is definitely more relevant. But I know he plays like Julia Louis-Dreyfus's second-hand man or something.
Yeah, I mean, there are some critiques I have of the film in general in terms of what it says and what it's ultimately about. But I mean, of all the complaining I've done in the past 5 or 6 episodes about how bad this year's blockbuster season has been, this has been like probably my favorite mainstream release I've seen this year. It should not have worked as well as it did, but it really found a good emotional core for its central story, and actually it actually felt like it was paying off the characters in a way I was not expecting him to do it, and it did so in a smaller story than I was expecting.
Yeah.
The only thing that makes this feel discernibly different from the other Toy Story films is that this is almost entirely the Woody show. Like almost none of the other the toys show up for more than a scene or two, and partially it's because half the voice actors are dead, so they had to use like audio takes from the other films for like Mr. Potato Head and stuff like that. And it's clear this is going to be like the final time we see it if they ever do like Toy Story 5 or something like that. But like this should not have worked as well as it did, especially just rooting it in the story of Woody and Forky and their adventures. It made it work so well, because it let them just kind of go off into their own territory and find all these other toys that we'd never met before, and all of them are voiced brilliantly. They're all acted brilliantly, and it all leads up to a great conclusion.
Oh yeah, the combat Carl scene. And then the winter combat Carl always gets left out in the high five. But no, and I think like what you were saying with Woody, he had to be central because of the importance of what happens to him at the end, what he has to realize himself. Like, because like it was, like the Thomas Carlyle Hero of a Thousand Faces journey. It was the same thing, but this time it was Woody's own personal journey to go to, because Woody was always toy number one all the way up through all of them, and then he has to come to the realization that he's not, and he has to step back.
It's a journey of self-actualization for him to find something beyond just being the number one toy, which I think that journey is really powerful, although it has some weird subtext to it I've read. Like some people, some critics I follow who are really good at lit analysis have talked about, like, this could read as like a Satanist reading of Toy Story. Like, rejecting the supreme notion of having to serve the toy as the most important thing in your life, and I'm like, that's a very dark reading.
Yeah, that's
But that's obviously it's an unintentional metaphor because clearly the people at Pixar were like, oh, it's a story about self-actualization and just finding a place for yourself, and that probably could be a secondary flaw. Is just that the movie doesn't quite control its metaphor all that well.
Well, I liked Gabby's character too because one is voiced by Christina Hendricks, who's awesome.
She's great.
Yeah.
I like that she's the first villain in the franchise that isn't actually a villain. She just wants something that the main character has that he's not ready to give up. So.
And it's also a really powerful message on perfection. Like, don't strive for perfection because, like, and that was great because all she thought she needed was of her voice box and she would be perfect and everything would be perfect and her life as a toy would be perfect, and then she gets it. And then she gets rejected by Harmony. She based her whole life on the opinion of what she thought somebody else would think of her if she was perfect. And then she realized that in that one fatal instant where she just gets tossed into the dustbin of the antique store. Wow, that's quite an analogy. That she realizes that it wasn't, that it's like, that don't think, it's like that message of like, don't be what you think people want you to be who you are. And in being herself, she made friends at the end with that one little girl who was lost. And there was a really good message. I also like the part where Bo takes over and just basically tells Woody, like, because Woody is still trying to be the toy supreme and run everything. And then it's just finally she tells him, like, you ruined the plan, just stay out of the way, and he does, and everything, like, it works out. It was part of his self-actualization journey where it's like, I have to I can rely on other people. It
Bo
doesn't
Peep is
have to
great
be
in
me.
this movie. Like,
she was.
They kind of wrote her off for 3 because the original actress, I think, either couldn't come back or died. I don't remember which, but the story they start with, and the movie begins with explaining what happened to Bo Peep initially, and then they bring her back, obviously, for the story, and it ends up being like the best part of the journey, which is just her and Woody bonding.
That's why I love Pixar. They're suckers for story structure.
They'll sometimes when they're not making bad sequels.
Yeah. But yeah, I do. Okay, so it was somebody else because I looked and Bo Peep was voiced by Annie Potts, who was like, oh, Annie Potts, Janine from Ghostbusters. I was like, yeah, Annie Potts. I was like, all right, cool. But I think really too, like, and in getting in putting Woody in the backlight, Forky really stepped up. I know it's weird to talk like that about it, but that character of Forky was great. I love this whole.
I love Forky so much. He gets
trash, and then when you find out why he's so infatuated with trash, it's.
I mean, it's basically a metaphor for suicidal ideation.
Yeah.
It's so dark, and
I
think, but it works so well.
Yeah, I just like how he gets life.
Well, the rules of Toy Story seem to be pretty fast and loose. That is, you are given life the moment your child decides you are important to them, which is, I guess, that's the only like hard and fast rule to this. Although the implications of that, the implications of everything in this universe are terrifying. So
I also like to, and see, that's what I like about, because Toy Story still is a big thing because the fact that they had Jordan Peele as one of the voices, especially
he and Peele, not just Jordan.
Them together as the Ducky and the rabbit, and their stories alone. When they were trying to explain how to get the key, that was one of the funniest parts of the entire movie. that alone is worth the price of admission as they steal an old cliche, but it was so funny. And then I liked just they had a lot. It was like it's nice to like, and like part of it, the thing with like the Pixar films and just other ones like that in general is recognizing the voices. When you finally recognize that Keanu Reeves is the voice of Duke Cannon, or what? No, not Duke Cannon.
I know Duke something.
Yeah, the stunt motorcycle.
Duke Kaboom.
Duke Kaboom. Yeah, I mean it's again, I liked it. I liked the whole thing. I think Pixar kept the Toy Story franchise alive with this one, and I think that they gave it what it needed and what it deserved.
June was the month of Keanu, so
that is true. Yeah, John Wick Chapter 3 and
John Wick Chapter 3. Won't You Be My Maybe, which he plays the bad boy boyfriend in.
Oh, okay.
He was the main. He's apparently now a character in Cyberpunk 2077, which I don't know if you've seen that or not. But he's like a main character in a video game now. So, and Toy Story 4. So I was like, Keanu for days.
I like Keanu. I hope he's not going the Nick Cage route. You remember the summer of Nick Cage?
What was that?
Oh, Face Off, Con Air.
Oh.
The Rock.
Oh.
And then now where's Nick Cage? Don't tell Coppola I said that.
Are you discounting his performance in USS Indianapolis?
I am. Yes, I am. But no, yeah, like you said, as far as summer blockbusters go, Toy Story 4 is definitely one that's worth seeing. And
Yeah.
I think not. And the great thing too about Pixar, especially when you have younger kids, Pixar, I think they kind of started that whole like, that's like let's make a movie for kids, but make a kids movie that parents can also enjoy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good all around.
You think we're going to get Toy Story 5 a decade from now?
I think so. I'm wondering what it's going to be, though. Is it going to be The Adventures of Forky, or is it going to be The Lone Adventures of Woody and Bo?
Well, oh yeah, because they can't really do Buzz or any of the old toys anymore because half those characters or those actors are dead. So
Yeah.
So it'll probably be, if anything, they're just using the ending of this movie as a jumping off point for like the new characters, because obviously these new characters are so compelling. I think they could hold another movie, but
Sure.
I can't imagine that Pixar would be immediately ready to jump in on a fifth one after just how conclusive this one was.
Yeah, for sure. And where do you start? Because like I think when they ended it, Bonnie went from kindergarten to first grade, and then it's like, so is Bonnie going to be the new Andy?
No, well, like it wouldn't be that, because I mean, obviously, even we need to talk about Buzz. Buzz was really bad in this movie. Like
He definitely was in the background a lot.
well, he not only that, but he was played off as a complete dunce the whole
Yeah.
time. Like he's like listen to your inner voice. Oh, he pushes his button
Yeah.
and he starts taking advice from the toy, his button.
Yeah.
It is such a weird story.
They laced in a good joke with that though, when like because it was like his real inner voice was trying to tell him to save Woody, but he kept listening to that and it kept telling him to go home. So he didn't know what to do. It was like, go home, go back to Star Command. Your mission is over. And he's like, no. I just like, so he knew what he had to do. He's just like, yeah. But I do get it was voiced by Tim Allen too, again, which is kind of weird that Tim Allen would have such a. Because like you said dunce, which that one went over my head a little bit, but he was background though. I don't think Buzz was as in the spotlight.
Even Jesse wasn't a big character in this.
No, none of them were. And maybe that's part of it.
Yeah, it's just weird seeing a lot of the big characters get completely written off.
Yeah.
That's all the time we have for this segment. Join us for the final segment. We'll be getting this week's movie recommendation. Stay tuned. Hello, welcome back to the final segment. We're going to hand things over to Terry now for this week's movie recommendation.
Thank you. I wanted to recommend Fred Decker's 1987 cult classic, The Monster Squad. It's basically a story about a group of kids that make their own club. They're very infatuated with the Universal monsters, Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman. They base a club on it. And in the movie, Dracula and all those monsters are real, and he uses an amulet to come back into the world and like cast the world into darkness for 100 years. And it's up to these kids. They find out what's going on, and it's up to them to stop him. It's got some very great lines in it. It's also a lot of fun. And I was thinking of a tie-in because it came out in 1987, and The Goonies was in 1985. So I think this might have been Decker's response to The Goonies, but as a more modern tie-in. It kind of matches Stranger Things.
Yeah,
really
it does.
well.
I've seen the movie, so I can talk about it. So I mean, this definitely comes out of the '80s tradition of four young boys on bicycles running around doing things. It's like the E.T. Stand By Me kind of model, but
Yes.
but it has the Stranger Things, like supernatural things happening, and obviously this is like a Universal monster movies kind of deal, which is, I don't know if any kid in the '80s knew what would have grown up with the Universal monster movies as like people 30 years before would have, but
I think Frankenstein might have been probably in the 80s, maybe Frankenstein or the Wolfman.
Universal monster movies were 30s and 40s.
Yeah,
so,
and Dracula's always popular. Kids know who Dracula
yeah,
is.
I mean, maybe this is like the first generation of VHS tapes, kids.
Yeah,
so.
now they need zombies. Kids wouldn't know, but yeah. But again, it's got great. It's just fun. It's actually a fun movie.
It's basically a kids movie, so like it's not one of those things where you should get your hopes super high for it.
But I think even 80s kids, like people like of my generation, will still get a kick. I still got a kick out of it. And it's, speaking of a kids movie, there's scenes in there that I was like, ooh, I don't know if my kids would be able to handle this. But
scare your children.
Yeah, right.
Scare children.
But
this is the only political advocacy I'm going to take on this show.
Right.
Scare your children with scary movies.
Right. They need it.
Brave little toaster.
But no, it's definitely, listen, it's not, it doesn't have the power of Goonies, but then again, Goonies was made by Spielberg. And, you know, Spielberg
Produced,
is...
I think.
Was it produced?
He didn't direct it.
No, okay.
He directed E.T.
Okay, all right.
He
so,
probably
well,
presided over the entire phenomenon of 80s children on bicycle movies.
right?
It's a
and,
genre.
And Steven's Midas touch, Spielberg touches, and it is now gold.
Well, not nowadays, but...
Yeah. But, no, but again, it's really... I said it was just cool to see like all those monsters. It was a movie that I remember seeing when I was a kid, and like one of the best parts was one of the little boys who's in the Monster Squad wakes his dad up to say, "There's a monster in my closet." And, you know, just like anybody who's ever been a parent has those things, and the dad comes in, he's checking, monster, no monster, no monster. And then the kid's like in the closet, and he opens up the closet, and the mummy's standing in there like this and everything. The dad's yelling, scolding his kid while the mummy's behind him like this. The dad's like, "There's no monsters," and just slams the closet shut. It's like, "Now go to bed." It's just a really funny take on, said it's a movie that I think people will still enjoy. I think even... Maybe not young kids, because this is 87, and I think the ratings were a little different then. Not only the ratings, but we weren't as politically correct in 87 as we were, so there are some parts in there that you might be like, ooh, I don't know about that. But still, good one to watch. And it's on TV, on demand, so good one to watch and one that should be easy to find.
Yeah, I watched it from it was at my old library, so it's not an uncommon movie.
Yeah.
Especially if you already like the Universal monster movies. So I don't know how popular those are nowadays. So
I think more film buffs would get into the Universal monster movies because
Universal monster movies, in my experience, those are like old school horror fans, like our mutual friend Bone Jangler and Steve.
Yeah.
And so those guys will watch them on like infinite number of times. So.
I'll pay homage to the Universal, but if it's like old school horror Hammer films, were probably better.
Well, yeah, those have been like 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
That's all the time we have for this episode of the show. If you want to find past recordings of the show, you can do so at the Groupthink Productions YouTube page. You can follow me on Twitter at @AntisocialCritI. That's critic without the C at the end of it. And you can find my written views at Geeks Under Grace and Legal Insurrection. I'm Tyler with the Fox Valley Film Critics. Have a wonderful day.